I had these obsessive thoughts, all my life. They wouldn't go away. What makes a man cross the line, from human to monster? Was he born this way? Or did something create him? Tonight, we step inside the mind of a man who committed the unthinkable, and ask the question, could it have been prevented? To understand Jeffrey Dahmer, we have to go back. Before the police sirens, before the horrors hidden behind apartment walls, before the blood-stained floors and bones in acid-filled vats. Back to a lonely boy, lost in the shadows of a broken home. On May 21, 1960, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, a child was born who would one day become one of the most infamous serial killers in history. But at first glance, Jeffrey Lionel Dahmer seemed ordinary. Behind the white picket fence and the warm glow of suburban life, something was already wrong. His mother, Joyce Dahmer, battled severe mental health issues. Panic attacks, paranoia, prescription drugs lined the cabinets of their home. She spent days, sometimes weeks, locked inside her room, crying, rocking back and forth, consumed by anxiety and fear. Meanwhile, his father, Lionel Dahmer, was absent. A man obsessed with work, buried in scientific research, unaware, or unwilling, to see what was brewing inside his son. By the time Jeffrey was 4, arguments filled the house like thick, choking smoke. Shouting matches. Slamming doors. The sound of a child crying in the background. And then, the first sign of something dark within Jeffrey. One day, he watched in silent fascination as his father removed the bones of a small animal from beneath the house. He stared, eyes wide, captivated, as Lionel explained how the bones fit together, how they clicked and locked into place. Most children would be disgusted, but Jeffrey? Jeffrey was thrilled. It was the beginning of something he couldn't quite understand, yet. Soon after, young Jeffrey started collecting them. Bones. Skulls. The decayed remains of roadkill. He even gave them a name, his fiddlesticks. By 10 years old, something had changed. A neighbor's dog went missing. Rumors swirled that Jeffrey knew what happened, but no one questioned it. He had learned an important lesson: he could keep secrets. And no one would suspect a thing. Was Jeffrey Dahmer born a monster? Or was he shaped into one? The answer lies ahead. By the time Jeffrey Dahmer reached high school, something was different. Imagine walking down the halls, passing a quiet, awkward teenager. Glasses slipping down his nose, his posture slouched, his presence barely noticeable. A loner. A misfit. Just another face in the crowd. At first glance, Jeffrey seemed like any other outcast. But beneath that quiet exterior, a darkness was growing. He wasn't just withdrawn. He was unraveling. By 16, he was drinking heavily. Vodka. Whiskey. Cans of beer stuffed into his backpack. He would come to school intoxicated, slurring his words, stumbling through the day. Teachers noticed. Students whispered. But no one stopped him. And then, there was his humor. Strange. Disturbing. A series of bizarre outbursts that would become legendary among his classmates. Have you ever heard of the Dahmer fan club? A small group of students became fascinated by Jeffrey's weird behavior. They encouraged him, egged him on. They laughed when he faked seizures. When he mimicked people with disabilities. When he barked like a dog in the middle of class. To them, it was just a joke. But for Jeffrey, it was something more. A mask. A way to blend in. A way to hide the thoughts that had started invading his mind. Thoughts of control. Of violence. Of doing more than just imagining it. So, let me ask you. Was Jeffrey Dahmer destined to become a killer? Or could someone have stopped him before it was too late? It was the summer of 1978. Jeffrey had just graduated high school. His parents were divorcing. His home was an empty shell, his mother gone, his father absent. And Jeffrey was alone. Loneliness can do strange things to the mind. And then, an opportunity. Stephen Hicks. 18 years old. Hitchhiking home from a concert. He never made it. Dahmer picked him up, offering him a ride, a few drinks, a little company. Hours passed. They talked. They drank. But when Stephen said he wanted to leave, something snapped. Jeffrey couldn't let him go. He couldn't stand the thought of being alone again. And so, he grabbed a dumbbell. And he struck him. Again. And again. And again. It was over. His first kill. His first taste of control. And now, the real question. Did he regret it? Or did something inside him awaken? Because what happened next is chilling. Jeffrey didn't panic. He didn't run. He didn't turn himself in. He did something much worse. He dismembered Stephen Hicks' body. Methodically. Piece by piece. He crushed the bones. Dissolved them in acid. Scattered them in the woods behind his house. And then, he went back to life as if nothing happened. And just like that, Jeffrey Dahmer got away with murder. But this was just the beginning. For 9 years, nothing. No arrests. No murders. No one suspected a thing. Did he stop? Or was he simply waiting? And then, 1987, the monster inside him could no longer be controlled. Jeffrey Dahmer began killing again. And this time, he wasn't going to stop. His victims? Young men. Often vulnerable. Many from marginalized communities. Those who wouldn't be missed. Was it about power? Control? Or was it something deeper? Jeffrey later admitted he didn't kill for pleasure. He killed for companionship. He didn't want his victims to leave. He wanted them to stay with him. Forever. But how long could he keep getting away with it? How did no one notice? And what finally led to his downfall? Because Jeffrey Dahmer was becoming reckless. And soon, he would make a mistake. Next, the hunt begins. How does a man commit 17 murders, over 13 years, and no one notices? How does a killer operate in the heart of a city, luring victim after victim, while remaining invisible? The truth is, Jeffrey Dahmer should have been caught. Multiple times. But he wasn't. And the reason why goes far beyond his cunning or deception. It was the system that failed. Some say he was lucky. Others say he was smart. But in reality, it was negligence, racial bias, and a series of catastrophic mistakes that let Dahmer slip through the cracks. And nothing proves this more than the case of Connor X and the Sumphone. May 27, 1991. A Milwaukee street. Late at night. A boy is running. 14 years old. Barefoot. Bleeding. Confused. He collapses onto the pavement. A woman sees him, she calls 911. This was Connor accent the phone. A child. And he was trying to escape from Jeffrey Dahmer's apartment. This was it. The moment law enforcement had a chance to end the nightmare. To save a life. And yet, what happened next? Defies all logic. 2 officers arrived. They found Connor disoriented, drugged, unable to speak properly. And standing just a few feet away, was Jeffrey Dahmer. He told the officers it was just a lover's quarrel. He said Connor was his boyfriend. That he'd just had too much to drink. And the officers believed him. The witnesses tried to intervene. Neighbors pleaded with the police, told them something was wrong. But the officers shut them down. One even laughed, telling dispatch, "We're dealing with a domestic situation with some homosexuals." And then, they did the unthinkable. They escorted Connor back to Dahmer's apartment. Once inside, Dahmer injected acid into Connor's brain. By morning, the boy was dead. And here's the most disturbing part. If the officers had run a background check, they would have discovered something chilling. Just 2 years earlier, Dahmer had been arrested for sexually assaulting Connor's older brother. The police had literally handed a victim back to a serial killer. So let me ask you, was this incompetence? Or something worse? Because think about this, if Connor had been a young white girl, would the police have listened? Did race and sexuality play a role in their decision to ignore the warning signs? And if law enforcement had done their job that night, how many lives would have been saved? Now, let's step inside Dahmer's mind. Who was he? Truly? Was he simply evil? Or was there something deeper at play? Psychologists have debated this for years. Was he a psychopath? A sadist? Or was his mind wired in a way that even he couldn't understand? Some experts believe Dahmer wasn't just a killer. He had traits of borderline personality disorder, abandonment issues, extreme loneliness, a desperate need for control. But then, there's the part no one can explain. The cannibalism. Why did he do it? Why eat his victims? Dahmer himself admitted it wasn't about the taste. It was about possession. In his own words, they became a part of me. Did he feel remorse? Did he regret it? Or was every apology just another manipulation? Some believe he was completely sane. That he knew exactly what he was doing. Others argue he was deeply mentally ill. So let me ask you, what do you think? Was Jeffrey Dahmer a monster born, or a monster made? One thing is certain. Dahmer's secrets wouldn't stay hidden forever. His downfall was coming. July 22, 1991. Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Inside apartment 213 of the Oxford Apartments. Jeffrey Dahmer is making his final mistake. By now, Dahmer had perfected his method, luring men in, drugging them, controlling them, then, taking their lives. But on this night, something was different. Because his final victim didn't go down without a fight. His name was Tracy Edwards. 32 years old. Just looking for a good time. But the moment he stepped inside Dahmer's apartment, he knew something was wrong. The air was thick with an awful smell. A smell he couldn't place. Dahmer locked the door, smiled, told him to relax. Then, he pulled out the handcuffs. Tracy played along. He knew he had to. But his heart was racing. He could feel it in his throat. Then, Dahmer whispered something chilling. "I'm going to eat your heart." That was it. Tracy knew he had seconds to escape. He waited. Watched. And when Dahmer looked away, he ran. Barefoot. Handcuffed. He burst into the street, flagging down 2 police officers. "This guy tried to kill me." For the first time in over a decade, someone escaped Jeffrey Dahmer's grasp. And this time? The police listened. At 11:30 p.m., Officers Mueller and Roth knocked on Dahmer's door. He let them in. He was calm. Too calm. They asked about the handcuffs. Dahmer tried to explain it away. But then, one of the officers spotted something on the nightstand. A stack of Polaroids. At first, they didn't understand what they were looking at. Then it hit them. These weren't just photos of bodies. These were photos of bodies, in pieces. "Cuff him." Dahmer tried to resist. He fought back. But it was over. And when the police searched his apartment, they uncovered a nightmare beyond comprehension. A human head in the refrigerator. 2 more in the freezer. Jars filled with preserved organs. A drum, filled with acid and decomposing remains. This wasn't just a crime scene. This was a slaughterhouse. And Jeffrey Dahmer? He had been living in it, eating in it, sleeping in it, for years. The monster had finally been caught. But was he truly remorseful? Or was this just another part of his game? Behind bars, Dahmer confessed everything. No resistance. No excuses. He described each murder in detail, as if he were reading a grocery list. And yet, he didn't seem to enjoy it. He wasn't gloating. He wasn't laughing. Instead, he looked tired. He told the court, "I should be dead for what I've done." He was sentenced to 957 years in prison. No chance of freedom. No way out. But even locked away, the world wasn't done with Jeffrey Dahmer. Because 2 years later, someone decided to deliver their own version of justice. November 28, 1994. Dahmer was assigned to janitorial duty with 2 other inmates. One of them was Christopher Scarver, a man who claimed to hear the voice of God. And on that day? That voice gave him a mission. In the gym showers, Scarver grabbed a steel rod. He cornered Dahmer. Didn't say a word. And then, he struck. Dahmer collapsed. His skull cracked open. Blood pooling around him. For some, this was karma. A life for a life. For others? It was too quick. Too easy. So let me ask you, was this justice? Or was Jeffrey Dahmer cheated of true punishment? Some believe he wanted to die. That he stopped fighting. That he knew, deep down, his time was up. And in his own words, years earlier, he may have foreshadowed his fate. "I know I will be killed in prison." And just like that, the Milwaukee cannibal was gone. But here's the thing. Dahmer's story didn't end with his death. Because the questions still remain. Could he have been stopped sooner? Was he truly insane? And most disturbingly, are there more like him out there? Ones we haven't caught yet? Evil or ill? Predator or victim of his own mind? Decades after Jeffrey Dahmer's reign of terror ended, one question remains: was he born a monster, or was he created by the world around him? Some say he was the embodiment of pure darkness, an individual who knew exactly what he was doing and felt no remorse. Others argue that he was a deeply disturbed man, shaped by childhood neglect, addiction, and mental illness. But does it matter? Should the justice system have spotted him sooner? Should the warning signs have led to an intervention before it was too late? Think about it, Dahmer wasn't a criminal mastermind. He wasn't particularly cunning. He was sloppy. He left behind evidence, he nearly got caught multiple times, and yet, he kept slipping through the cracks. Was this a failure of the system? A failure of law enforcement? Or was it something even more terrifying, a reflection of society's own blindness? And here's the most unsettling question of all: could a modern-day Jeffrey Dahmer exist today? In a world of social media, surveillance cameras, and advanced forensics, would he have been caught sooner? Or would a killer like him find new ways to operate in the shadows, exploiting different weaknesses in the system? Let us know what you think in the comments. Is evil born, or made? So, what do you think? Was Jeffrey Dahmer born a monster, or was he created by his environment? Could his crimes have been prevented, or was his fate inevitable? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. And if you want more deep dives into the darkest minds in history, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Until next time, stay safe, and stay curious.